Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me in our journey of healing. I just returned yesterday from my second Vipassana meditation camp. And I knew I had to share something very important with you. This technique that I'm calling the breakthrough deep breathing meditation therapy. It came to me in this second camp. If you don't know Vipassana, it's a 10-day meditation retreat where students are not allowed to talk to other students, not allowed to make eye contact, no gestures. This is called noble silence. You vow to not affect anyone. And there's numerous meditation times during the day, approximately 9 hours, starting at 4:30 a.m. You're awoken by a gong at 4, and you meditate for 2 hours from 4:30 to 6:30, 1 hour for breakfast, meditate, lunch, meditate. Eyes are closed the whole time. Seating position is not crucial. Cross-legged, seiza like this, anything. The only important thing is the spine is straight and open. I did my first one 16 years ago in Vancouver, Canada, and yesterday was Tokyo, Japan. The technique was taught by the man we call the Buddha, although Buddha means enlightened one. There were many before and have been many after. Over 2,500 years ago, he taught this technique of sharpening the mind's awareness, the sensation, first of all, of breath, breathing through the nose. For the first 3 days of the camp, that's all we do, focus on the breath, respiration. And what we find is the mind, the ego, is very difficult to control. And going into this second time, 16 years later, I thought it would be easier to control. I was wrong. First, a little bit about myself. I'm a 48-year-old Canadian man living in Japan with my Japanese wife. My daughter will soon be 12, my son is 9. And for 9 years we lived here, 2003 to 2012. And I've been teaching English that whole time. We decided to move to Toronto, my hometown as it were, in 2012, April, and for 2 years I struggled to make a living, and it was too difficult to teach English in Toronto and make a living. So we came back to Japan, this time to Tokyo the first time, in March of 2014, so 23 months in Toronto, stressful months. I've had 8 interviews, 6 of which were successful, 5 of them being part-time jobs. I worked at 5 universities for a couple years, and the 6th one being a full-time job I started last year. So I've been on the rush hour trains in Tokyo far too many times. You know about them, right? They're much worse than you think. So this time, going into Vipassana, my second time, I knew I needed to find that center, find that balance, the equanimity that Goenkaji teaches about. He tells us there's only two things that can create imbalance in one's life. And this is craving. You're trying to get something you don't have. And aversion. You're trying to avoid something that is in your life. So I went in looking for balance. And the first day I meditated along with everyone all day, and my monkey mind, as Goenkaji calls it, was not able to be controlled. And I listened to his advice saying, don't be concerned, just come back to the breath, start again with a calm and controlled mind. And on the second day in the morning, same thing. I could not control my mind. And I listened to Goenkaji's advice. He said, if you find your mind wandering, come back to the breath. Breathe deeper for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. And I was trying to do this in the hall with all of the meditators around me, and I felt that it was a slight violation of noble silence to breathe too deeply. People could hear me. So in the afternoon I went to my room. There was a meditation stool there, and I tried to breathe deeply, and I discovered the breakthrough. I sat on the meditation bench, hands relaxed on my thighs, I'll show you later. Began to breathe deeply, like this. I did not want to move the shoulders up and down or move the body too much. Just expand and contract the lungs as much as possible without disturbing the body too much. And I used a mantra, which I have been using for many years before I began Vipassana. And it's very simple. On the in-breath, I say peace. On the out-breath, I say love. And I did this for about 15 minutes. Then I switched to a mantra just simply in and out for I'm not sure how much longer. The mantra is very good because when you're breathing and attending to the sensation in a simple mantra, it generally keeps other thoughts from cropping up and helps one focus, I find. So after another 10 minutes perhaps of this, I realized that I had switched the in and out, and this was good. I was saying out on the in-breath and in. I was getting confused perhaps. And this is good. My arms were sore. My thighs were sore. Sweat was coming from my armpits, down the back of my neck, back of my legs. And after a few more minutes, I realized I wasn't thinking. I was in a meditative state. I kept breathing, kept the eyes closed. And after a few moments of this open, meditative, thoughtless state, a feeling of bliss came over me. I observed it. And then a wave of emotion washed through me. All of the negative emotions I've experienced in the past 5 years, perhaps my whole life. washed out of me, and it was so challenging to keep my mouth closed and to keep my breathing through the nose. But I did. The tears were flowing, the sobs were coming up. And I was still in a meditative state, and a word came to me, not in my own voice. And I will tell you this word in another video. I don't want to color your experience. I don't want to shape your experience. You may have your own words or images, emotions, thoughts. And I slowly let my body relax, calm down, stop breathing heavily. And then after a few minutes of coming back to a very relaxed, open state, maybe the most relaxed and open I've ever been, I lay down on my bed and I pondered that word and what it meant. And I realized people I needed to speak to. And I pictured in my mind the conversations that I needed to have, and 3 more words came to me. Again, I will explain them in a different video. And the tears came again, and I let them, observed them, welcomed them. And slowly my body came back to a deeper state of calm than I've ever felt. And I realized at that moment I could leave Vipassana having fully achieved a new me, a reborn self, a free soul. But I decided to stay because I wanted to go deeper and try this again, because I knew I had to share it with you. Another thing that Goenkaji teaches us is that when we have these experiences of cravings and aversions, it's like we're tying knots and leaving them somewhere in our body. For me, it's usually along the spine of the neck, maybe shoulders, and that one spot I can't quite reach. Could be the same, different for you. So when you are ready to release negativity from your life, when you are ready to break through into a new, free state, I suggest you make these preparations. Tissue right nearby where you can reach with your eyes closed. Chair you can sit very comfortably. Perhaps a futon. You might want to put a towel on it. You might be very sweaty when you eventually lay down. I suggest doing it on an empty stomach and avoiding your bladder and bowels beforehand. And unplug the phone, turn off the phone. No distractions. Lights out is fine. Make a vow to yourself to not open your eyes or your mouth until you know you are done. show you some of the breathing that I did, that was done to me, through me. As I mentioned, I started with my mantras. 15 minutes of perhaps breathing like this. Deep breathing from the diaphragm. You don't want to raise your shoulders. You want to keep the body without moving much, except for the lungs, ribs, diaphragm. And after perhaps 15 minutes of that, something different happened. Breathing like this will most likely make your nose run a lot. So keep the tissues where you can reach them, throw them on the floor. After, like I said, perhaps 15 minutes, my throat also began to release phlegm. And I decided to just spit it out in time with the breath. And the breathing began to take its own rhythm. Perhaps this may happen for you, something like this. And the mantra changed, and then eventually the mantra stopped, and then I knew I had to keep breathing through the nose. Keep the mouth closed. Do not go into the gasping flight or fright response. Breathe through the nose. Let your soul take control of your body and mind. Soul control. And the release continued. Tears sobbing through my closed mouth and my nose. Kept breathing, keep breathing. Being at Vipassana, of course, I had no pen nor paper nor anything to record anything except my memory. And I knew I needed to share this with you. And I knew I could happily, fulfilled, walk away from Vipassana at that moment, 4 p.m. on day 2. And I decided to stay, to go deeper into my meditations and learn more about this breakthrough therapy. And the following morning, I did the meditations with the group, and it was very difficult to control my mind. I kept thinking about this breakthrough experience and sharing it, and there were moments of meditative calm. In the afternoon, I made my second attempt. I was perhaps too intense, too eager. It took about 40 minutes and no breakthrough happened. I think I was breathing too hard. I was exhausted. I had the headache. I had the arms sore. The legs were sore. No breakthrough. So continued the course in the afternoon and evening. And the next morning continued. And in the afternoon of the 4th day, I attempted the breakthrough again with more calm breathing, still deep, and in approximately the same amount of time, perhaps 30 minutes, I did have another breakthrough. Similar emotions, more release of tension from the neck and shoulders and mid-back. And as I lay in bed that time, I knew I was done with Vipassana for this time, and I came home last night. And this morning I decided to do some research, and I looked on the internet about breath therapy, and I found many versions, none of them quite like this at all. And I got ready to share this with you mid-afternoon. And I know that when you are ready, this is the perfect thing for you to release what you need to release, to be your free self, your free soul, which is what you are, which is why you are here, what you are meant to be, free. Be free. Be happy. I love you.